Reminder, present to Tech Buying Committee tomorrow.
This looks interesting.
Your data center should be driving better business outcomes.
Exactly.
Find the right people, the right way.
Hi marketers, and thanks for joining us for our monthly virtual marketing lab today. My name is Renee Lowe. I sit on the customer marketing team here at LinkedIn, and we're really excited to bring you this class of advanced strategies today. I'm joined by two very fabulous and incredible speakers today, but I'll let them all introduce themselves shortly. Before I let them introduce themselves, I'm going to go through a quick overview of the tool that you're on today so that you're really set up for success. The tool that you're on today is called Slido. On the right-hand side, I think it might be on this side of me, you'll be able to ask questions, upvote any questions. So if you see another attendee asking a question that you absolutely love and wanted to ask, upvote that because we will get to those most upvoted questions first. You'll also be able to answer any poll questions throughout today's session on that right-hand side as well. So we'll test out our first poll question in a couple minutes, but we love hearing from you and getting to know who you are, where you're coming from, and just a little bit more about what you're doing. Finally, on the left-hand side, if you click on the Agenda tab, you'll be taken to a point drive link. I've actually included all the deck, the full deck from today's session, as well as a link to the B2B Institute, which one of our speakers will be talking about very shortly. Highly recommend you check it out. It's one of the best microsites that I've seen come out of LinkedIn. And then finally, before we get started, just the final couple details. We're going to take a quick coffee break at the middle of the session. Really to give you a quick break, I love it when people hashtag LinkedIn Marketing Labs, so I'll keep my eye out on that throughout the session. And then finally, we will have a survey at the end. This is really for me to get to know what you thought about the event. We love hearing your feedback. Feedback is truly a gift here at LinkedIn, so please take that survey to let us know what you thought. With that, I get to introduce our incredible presenters today. If you don't mind just stating your name and what you do at LinkedIn, I'll kick it off with you, Afia.
Thank you, Renee. Hello, everyone. My name is Afia Addison, and I'm the Global Program Manager for the B2B Institute. We are a think tank here at LinkedIn studying B2B marketing effectiveness, and we created today's trends that I'll be walking through.
Awesome. And then I'm going to punt it over to Amanda, who's on VC.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Green, and I am a Client Solutions Manager at LinkedIn. So my day-to-day is helping marketers like yourself be successful with their advertising on LinkedIn. Really glad to be with you guys today, and I'm excited to learn some cool stuff.
Cool. So now that you know a little bit about all of us, we really want to get to know a little bit about you. So I will be setting our first poll question live. Let us know what city you're joining from, and whoa, a lot of people have already started filling out.
Shout out New York. That's where I'm coming from. I see Toronto too. Come on, East Coast.
Yeah, wow, Toronto is really representing.
I love it.
Oh, Seattle coming through, San
Okay.
Francisco.
Hi, Chi-Town.
For the record, we're actually live streaming today from San Francisco, so for those of you tuning in, we're local as well. Cool. I'll give you guys a couple seconds to fill that out, and then I will dive into the agenda for today. All right. So a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to start off first with the product roadmap, and then we'll dive into overall campaign strategies, targeting strategies, and then ad format strategies. And then last but not least, I think it's really important to stay till the end for additional features for success. So don't miss out on that. As a reminder, this whole session is going to be recorded. So if you have to hop off at a certain point, just come right back to the console later on. The video will still be on this console. I now get to hand it right over to Amanda, who's going to kick it off with the product roadmap. Over to you, Amanda.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Renee and Afia. So I don't know if any of you guys on the stream have ever joined a marketing lab before, but the product roadmap is like always the most exciting part. It's like the gift at the end. But this time we're going to switch it up a little bit, and we're going to go through it in the beginning. I'm sure it's highly anticipated. So before we actually get into what is coming up on our product roadmap, I just kind of wanted to take a step back and talk through a little bit about what LinkedIn's mission is. Let's ground ourselves in LinkedIn's mission. So LinkedIn's mission is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. So it's always important to keep that in mind. So what we want to ask ourselves is, when it comes to marketing and helping businesses grow, where do we fit into that equation? So when we take a look at the makeup of LinkedIn, we have 660 million members on LinkedIn. There are 30 million companies on LinkedIn and 20 million open jobs on LinkedIn. So that's huge. So ultimately, we drive huge business growth. And then when we think about how we help marketers drive success on LinkedIn, it kind of falls into three key categories. Our power lies in leveraging a quality audience in a trusted environment and driving engagement and results that are actually meaningful. So with that right audience, we think about the reach that our marketers get. It's high quality at scale. There are actually 40 million business decision makers on LinkedIn. And when we think about decision makers, we're talking the people who are signing the contracts, saying yes to the budgets. So there's a huge opportunity here to reach the right people. And ultimately, when you're reaching the right people, you are turning those people into potential customers, which is ultimately is going to drive revenue for the business. So the moral of the story is we're in it to help businesses grow. So when we take a look at the product roadmap, the way our product team sort of thinks about the direction we're going in falls into three key categories. So that is creating engaging experiences, expanding relationships, and last but not least, being able to realize and understand the value that LinkedIn is driving for your business. So to start off, we'll talk a little bit about the opportunities coming down the pipeline for delivering an engaging experience. So first, we have LinkedIn Pages, which a lot of you guys have probably heard of, but we have some really cool new features that are rolling out through our Pages system. So just as a reminder, LinkedIn Pages is free. It's through our organic side of our business, but LinkedIn Pages is really what anchors a company's brand presence on LinkedIn. So it's really important that we communicate these updates and changes because ultimately it's to drive more effectiveness for your presence on LinkedIn. So some of the new features include content insights and suggestions, which one is really near and dear to my heart because that's what I do every day. I'm helping drive strategy. I'm helping give feedback on content, insights, what's actually going to keep your audience engaged. So the tool will now provide those insights and suggestions through the Pages application. There's also a feature rolling out that is going to provide notifications to employees that work for different companies when new content is published by your company. For those of you who are functioning as company page administrators, you are now able to manage the LinkedIn page through your mobile device. You also are able to post PowerPoints and PDFs, which was actually not a feature before. So that's really exciting in terms of, what new type of content you can post to your page. And then next on our list, we have LinkedIn Live. LinkedIn Live is currently being piloted. Its upcoming full release is going to happen a little bit later this year, but our live streaming video experience is enabling members and brands through the company pages to gather an audience for different events, help people find common ground on the content being shared, and really creating a valuable experience for members to participate and engage in real time. One thing to note that LinkedIn Live is also a free organic product. So this is not on the paid side just yet. Our product team is actually exploring the option for a paid advertising format, but that will be released a little bit later as we get more information from our product team. And then in that same vein of like building engagement, we are upcoming release for LinkedIn events. So we actually, as Renee mentioned earlier, we value feedback from our members. And we heard that to our members, meeting people face to face is really critical when it comes to building and engaging professional relationships, building professional communities. And we think that there's no better place to do it than LinkedIn. So the goal of LinkedIn events is really to bridge the gap between that online and offline engagement. So with events, members will be able to start conversation about upcoming events. They'll be able to network with other people that will be attending the event, which will hopefully lead to more in-person interaction. our LinkedIn events is currently in beta, but we are looking to release it soon. It's early 2020. We don't have an exact date yet, but it's coming very soon. So that's really exciting. And it's not just exciting for companies that are advertising, but it's also exciting as individual members as well. I know we attend a lot of events here at LinkedIn, externally and internally. So keep an eye out for that exact release date. That's really exciting. Video ads, as you guys probably know, some of you out there may already be leveraging video ads, but we actually have some new features that are rolling out. So the square video ad format, where you can use a 1-to-1 image ratio, is now available for video ads. We also have a Moat integration. So Moat is a third-party tracking tool where advertisers can actually link their campaign manager account to their Moat account and actually track more detailed video metrics to more effectively measure video performance on LinkedIn. And then one feature update that's on the horizon is LinkedIn Stories. So I know I'm a huge user of Stories. I used to use them on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. So Stories is actually rolling out for LinkedIn. That's going to come probably later this year, but that's something to keep in mind that's on the horizon. And then conversation ads. Conversation ads is actually one that I'm really excited about. For those of you guys who haven't heard of it before, conversation ads is sort of an enhancement to our product called message ads, formerly known as sponsored in-mail. But conversation ads is an experience to enable a more conversational interaction with your audience. So with conversation ads, you'll be able to actually start a dialogue with key decision makers and professionals in your target audience. You'll be able to build that messaging experience through artificial intelligence, which is really exciting, and actually gauge the level of interest at every stage in the funnel, from the very top to the very bottom. This is currently in beta, but the release is going to be happening, I believe, within the next month or two. So definitely keep an eye out for that. So to move on to like our second bucket of the product roadmap, let's talk through some enhancements that are coming to expand relationships between business and professionals. Interest targeting. So interest targeting is one of our recently released features where you're actually able to target members on LinkedIn based on intent. I remember when I first started at LinkedIn, like almost 5 years ago, we had a lot of requests from clients about, can we target people that are interested in these topics? So the product team heard that feedback, and now we actually have that option. So we use the data that we use to drive interest targeting is like based on what members are reading, liking, commenting, sharing, topics or companies or influencers that a member follows. So you are actually able to build targeting campaigns based on those interests. So if you're not already leveraging them, or if you have not already leveraged this particular targeting option, I highly encourage you to do it. It's a great option, especially for like awareness or brand awareness based campaigns. Lookalike Audience is another recently released product. So you can actually build a lookalike audience based on either an ABM list, which we'll talk a little bit about later on in the presentation. You can also build lookalike audiences based on different website audiences that you've built. So lookalikes is a really great way to not only scale your audience, but create an audience that mirrors qualities that you find in your ideal target audience. So if we want our data, our first party data is really, really cool. You can actually just click a button within your campaign manager tool. You can kind of see it in the picture. And it will create an additional audience that mirrors ones that you're already leveraging. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get more into like ABM strategies, but that's something that is available now. And then nurture targeting. I will say that is definitely one of the more highly anticipated rollouts. So nurture targeting is a feature that we're going to be rolling out where you can actually build a more tailored ad experience. Some marketers call it sequential messaging. So you actually you'll have the opportunity to serve ads to your target audience based on different actions they've taken, whether it's an ad click, a video view, a page that they visited on your website. this is another one that's been highly anticipated. We are currently waiting on word from our product team when this will open up in beta, but this should be rolling out a little bit later in 2020. And then buyer group targeting is in that same vein. With sort of when we think about expanding relationships and making sure that we're targeting the ideal people in what we call sometimes the buying committee. With the buyer group targeting, our goal is to reduce the complexity of selling into a buying committee. So it'll deliver advertisers a more complete view of like the decision makers and which decision makers are actually more likely to engage with the ad. This is also currently in beta, but this is expected to be released a little bit later this year. And then last but not least, let's talk about some of our product rollouts that foster growing that value and realizing if LinkedIn and how LinkedIn is really working to drive more success for your business. So one thing that's available now that some of you guys may be familiar with is objective-based advertising. And objective-based advertising is actually a more comprehensive campaign build experience. LinkedIn really wants to empower our marketers to not only build campaigns for success, but really be able to keep what those objectives are in mind. So with objective-based advertising, you actually select what your objective is at the beginning of your campaign creation process. And what it does is it allows our system and our algorithm to align which ads we show, what bids we recommend, what optimizations we recommend based on that specific objective, whether it's something that's more top of funnel like brand awareness, all the way down to that purchase decision, tracking things like generated leads or website conversions. So that's available now. If you guys are not already using it, I definitely encourage you to do so. And then in that same vein, we've also rolled out objective-based pricing and optimization. So if you guys have gone in recently to build any new campaigns, if you are using our automated bidding option, you actually are able to select the metric that you want our system to optimize for. So if your goal is to get more clicks, more impressions, or even something more specific like conversions, you can actually select that. And our system will adjust your bids based on what's going to get you that optimal result, whether it's clicks, impressions, or conversions. So that's something really cool as well. And then Audience Insights is something that's going to be rolling out sometime later this year. So Audience Insights is just a little bit more of a detailed overview for you to get to know and understand the customers that are going to help grow your business. So there is going to be a tool rolled out called the Audience Manager where you'll be able to view this. This, again, is set to be released a little bit later on this year. And then audience templates. Audience templates is just a feature that we've rolled out, which has these pre-built audiences of who you want to reach. For example, we have one for like the IT buying committee. And this is just pre-built combinations of audiences just to give you a framework if you want a little bit of guidance on where to start in terms of building your audience. So audience templates is available within the Campaign Manager tool at this time. So that's something that you can use in addition to whatever your current targeting is. And then last but not least, great news, we are expanding our partner program. So if there's any partners on the call right now that are listening and aren't maybe represented here right now, there could be a great opportunity to partner with us in the future. I'd encourage you guys to visit business.linkedin.com where you can get more information on who our partners are and how you can leverage them to expand your marketing program. And then again, we want to keep this this webinar interactive. So we have another poll question, and that is, so what on the marketing solutions roadmap are you most excited about? I'm excited to see.
Might punt a quick question over to all of you. We got a great question from Lee about what our #1 piece of advice would be for someone pretty new to LinkedIn ads.
Sure.
Either of you want to take it up?
Yeah, I can take that. So my number one piece of advice is honestly to start with sponsored content. So sponsored content is our most versatile ad format. There's a bunch of different variations when it comes to sponsored content, things like single image ads, carousel ads, video ads, and it works for all stages of the marketing funnel. So whether you have awareness goals or lead generation goals. So I'd say definitely start with sponsored content, as well as start with like a broad audience with sponsored content, and then leverage our campaign insights that we'll go into in a little bit more detail in this presentation to really then narrow your audience down over time. So two things, sponsored content and start broad.
Yeah, I would also add, like, if you are really just getting started and trying to figure it out and feel out if LinkedIn ads is the right place for you, test out your LinkedIn page organically and post some organic content there. See how that content does, whatever resonates the most with your audience and your followers already, push that and sponsor that as a sponsored content piece. So we find that's a good way to start. Amanda, do you have any other tips for Lee as somebody who's pretty new to LinkedIn ads?
Yeah, I would say in addition to that, one thing you want to keep in mind is just you can use LinkedIn for anywhere from your brand strategy, starting with your brand strategy, all throughout trying to actually acquire customers and like getting them through the purchase process. That's a conversation I have a lot, is that choosing between like, should I run brand content or should I run content that's going to acquire me new customers? I would definitely say prepare yourself to leverage both. I think Afia actually talks a little bit more about that as we get later on in the presentation, but that's just something to keep in mind because that's going to be essential for your marketing strategy.
Definitely.
100%. Let's take a look at the results that we're getting on what on the marketing solutions roadmap you're most excited for. I saw a lot talking about LinkedIn Live and events, and there actually was a question about what LinkedIn Live is. I think they were curious about how it works on our platform. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Sure, I can take that. So right now, as mentioned, LinkedIn Live is in beta for a few of our customers. And people are primarily using LinkedIn Live to kind of capture an experience at like an event or something. So we did it recently for like the digital new fronts, and we were capturing, so people who couldn't attend that event, we were able to live stream some of the content that was shared at that event, right? So that's primarily how a lot of customers are leveraging LinkedIn Live to date. But yeah, that's just kind of initially what we're seeing with the product. Anything from you, Amanda?
Yeah, so I have a couple clients that that are piloting it right now. And I would say like, as long as you have the third party software installed, it's really easy to use. And the exciting news is I did hear word from our product team that we are consistently enhancing that implementation. So to plug what Renee said again, if you are using it or plan to use it, definitely please send us your feedback, because it's a product that I know we're trying to flesh out and make even easier to use.
Awesome. I'm going to turn the poll off live, but thank you for all of your really great results. I love that you are excited about nurture targeting, conversation ads. We've got a lot of great stuff in store here at LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. With that, I think I'm going to hand it right over to Afia.
Yes.
To talk about campaign strategies.
All right, let's get into it. So as mentioned, the B2B Institute has created these trends, and I'm going to take you through not all of them today, but just a few of them. And definitely check out b2binstitute.com to learn more. So our first trend today is called You Are Where You Advertise. So I often present this one, and when I'm presenting, I often ask people which ad looks more expensive. Now, this is not a poll question, unfortunately, but oftentimes people will say B. And then I'll go into which product looks more expensive from you seeing these ads. To be honest, a lot of people are like, what's the product for B? What is it promoting? I think we know that it's an Apple ad because we're familiar, but if you honestly had to look at the product, you wouldn't really be able to get what that product is from the ad, right? But as a result, most people also will say B. The advertising looks expensive, so they figure the product must be expensive. So essentially what just happened there was called signaling. It's a term that we've borrowed from economics. And essentially what signaling is that the sheer expensiveness of the ad will then point to people that the product is expensive. So we understand that that's why Apple does stuff like this, right? They buy really expensive ad placements so that you know that they have a really high quality product. They understand how signaling works. Yet, a lot of us in the industry are not necessarily understanding how signaling works, right? So a lot of media buyers are still really buying the cheapest inventory possible. So let's look at an example from Chase. So you definitely want to ask yourself, are your ads like reassuringly expensive or worryingly cheap? And so Chase kind of did that exercise for themselves. So they were running on 400,000 sites. They actually cut 395,000 sites from their media plan and saw the same bottom line results, right? So why is that? And the answer is because it's about quality, not quantity, right? You want to make sure that you're reaching people in the right context so that that kind of halo effect of the context then lends to your product or your service, right? So if you were wondering, like, what's a great high quality context for your ads, LinkedIn, right? So this data is from the Business Insider Intelligence Digital Trust Report. 3 years in a row, LinkedIn has ended up as the most trusted platform, undisputably. Just know that LinkedIn is most trusted in a few different areas, right? So this is a different cut of the data when it comes to privacy, when it comes to safety, right? LinkedIn has a really brand safe environment because of our login requirements as well. And that's why advertisers are coming to LinkedIn, right? For all of these reasons. And Business Insider actually attributed kind of the results of this, us being on top, because of the mindset of members on the LinkedIn platform. So when you think about us as a social network versus all the other social networks out there, right? People are coming to LinkedIn with that professional mindset. We are the largest professional network in the world, right? So being able to have that mindset, people come to LinkedIn to look at content, to up-level themselves in their career, gain new skills through LinkedIn Learning and things like that. And so here's some examples of the type of actions that people are taking on LinkedIn. And it really speaks to the fact that they're in that mindset and ready and primed for content from brands. So again, just kind of bringing it all home, our high quality environment really makes it the perfect place for advertisers to reach their audiences. So now let's move on to the war on brands. So what is this war? Well, it's a war for marketing budget. So this is a chart from the IPA, and in this chart, it's essentially seeing marketing effectiveness over time, both with direct response efforts as well as brand efforts, right? And so you can see in the early months, it looks like direct response is killing it. The activation, which is the darker green line, has really high marketing effectiveness, right? However, over time, that declines, and you'll see brand start to become more effective over time in terms of growing that market share for a specific brand, right? So we're not saying, obviously, run brand forever. There obviously has to be a mix, as Amanda kind of alluded to in the beginning of this presentation, right? And that optimal mix is what we're calling the 60-40 rule. So brand and demand gen marketers should really make a truce and kind of deal with the 60-40 rule. And that's 60% brand and 40% lead gen. So that's what we've seen from this IPA study. That's what we've seen as really the optimal mix to have most success in your campaigns. And also, I will caveat that this is kind of overall for B2C and B2B advertisers, for sure. So if you don't believe us, if you don't believe the IPA, we actually tested this. So this is one of our own LinkedIn marketing campaigns. And so we ran a campaign which was just direct response only. And then we ran another campaign that had a nice mix. So we did the 60-40 split. We had 60% of our budget focused on brand and 40% focused on lead generation specifically. And with that, our conversion rate was much higher. So when having that complementary mix of both brand and demand, we saw much stronger results. And the data shows, it's not just from our own campaign, right, that there's really a more effective approach when you have that blend. So, for example, 37% of tech buyers are less likely to consider a vendor that has gated content, right? So you want to make sure you're providing people with content that they can learn about your brand or your service easily. 75% of tech buyers are less likely to consider a vendor that gates all content. So I think we know that gating all content is not the way to go, but just to say it again, there needs to be that mix. And then lastly, 74% of buyers choose a company that was first to add value. So again, kind of speaking to the importance of branding, the importance of thought leadership, really important for you to kind of have that mix, not only offering gated content, but offer content that allows people to get a little bit more familiar with your brand. Moving on to our third trend. This one, it's one of my favorites. It's called the Originality Delusion. So if I had all of you in the room with me here today, I would ask you, who has gotten a brief, especially if I had some agencies in the room, who's gotten a brief and their client was like, we want something brand new? Well, before LinkedIn, I worked at an agency, and I can definitely say I've gotten that before, right? So marketers are kind of obsessed with newness. That being said, newness is not necessarily what sells. So we're gonna go to a quick example from Tropicana. So I don't know if anyone remembers this. I sure do. In 2009, Tropicana was like, let's switch it up. Let's do something a little bit different. And they decided to go with the logo, the bottle design that you're seeing on the right-hand side. Well, that was really detrimental to Tropicana's success. They lost something like $50 million in 5 weeks. So if that's a little bit more anecdotal, some more hard evidence is from the drum. So this is some data from the drum. Only 1 in 5 times does a new ad campaign outperform the old campaign. So 4 to 5 times, you're better off leaving the old creative running. That being said, we know you can't always do that, right? You can't just be like, oh, the old creative's crushing it, no need to optimize. So again, how do we kind of figure that out? How do we settle that? A little bit more data for you guys. What actually sells instead of something new is relevance and familiarity. So although originality was something that was requested, so this is our own data with Edelman, and we polled CXOs and we asked them kind of what's important. Originality did come up, but 2 times as important was relevance. So they want content that's really relevant to them. So now back to our Tropicana example, right? How did Tropicana kind of resolve this? How did they come back? Well, I'm going to introduce a framework called Meyer, and we stole this from an industrial designer named Raymond Louis. So he's responsible for the Shell logo. And Raymond Louis came up with this framework called Meyer, which stands for Most Advanced Yet Acceptable. So in this Tropicana example, they were like, okay, clearly we went all wrong by doing something completely new, and they retained a lot of the same brand elements, so things like the straw piercing the orange, the same font style, but they were like, what's something really advanced and new that we could do? And that was this crazy new bottling technology called plastic, right? So that was their advanced element in that kind of Meyer framework, right? The plastic was the advanced thing, and then they retained all those same brand elements. So I know this is a really B2C example, so we probably have some B2B marketers on the line. We are LinkedIn. How do you do that in B2B marketing, right? Like, what's a way to kind of implement this Meyer framework? Well, something like an ebook, right? Or a report that you have time over time. And not a new report every year. It means investing in a franchise. So actually, the trends that I'm presenting today are from an ebook that my team creates called B2B Trends. And year over year, we are constantly reiterating on these trends. So it's not something new, it's always us adding on more, right? So again, kind of keeping that framework, but then having some new element. Maybe it's a new trend that's a little bit more advanced. I think this is a great time when talking about kind of having content that's always on, and that people can engage with at any time, having thought leadership accessible. It's a good time to talk about programming your content calendar. So on LinkedIn, especially with sponsored content, you can run a few different pieces of content at the same time. Oftentimes, I think one of the biggest mistakes is that people will just run one version of the ad or one variation of that ad and kind of let it ride. Well, our tool will actually auto-optimize to the top performing ad by click-through rate. So it's best for you to have a few different variations of that ad. So you give our tool something to optimize towards, right? And then we're not saying obviously run budget towards all those ads over time. You may want to say, okay, these 2 are crushing it early on, and let me turn the other 2 off over time. So definitely, the main point of this slide is just have some content teed up, especially for agencies who have to kind of work with clients. Like, make sure that you kind of get that content up front before you are then kind of scrambling to get additional ad variations from your client, right? And then also just to know that, like, a lot of people think that, okay, I only should be running throughout these times of the day. B2B decision makers are actually always on. Research is always happening for what, decisions they should make for their company, right? So think about some of these stats here. So actually 69% of business decision makers research products during their workday. So workday, we know that's a good time to be on, but I think the more interesting stats here are that 73% are researching during the evening. So when you think people are like going home and watching Jeopardy, they're actually going home and turning on LinkedIn, right? So definitely makes sense to kind of have a strategy for always on. And then lastly, just want to speak to that half of decision makers tend to spend time on the weekends researching as well. So definitely important, again, to make sure you're not like turning off ads during the weekend. It's good to have them on always on. And so I'll explain the relevancy score in a little bit more detail in a second. But I want to talk about the importance of staying always on because of the relevancy score. So we're very similar to Facebook. I think Facebook has a relevancy score as well. Every campaign has a relevancy score. And if you pause your campaign for more than 2 weeks, it will severely deprecate your relevancy score. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes kind of like a LinkedIn hack is that if you are going to pause alt media and it's longer than a 2-week period, sometimes it actually makes more sense to kind of like duplicate that campaign and start fresh than actually kind of rerunning or just turning that back on because your relevancy score has dropped so low at that point, right? So again, just remember that pausing for more than 2 weeks can seriously impact your score. And then just to show you some more data to back that up, right? So look at an example. On the top here, you'll see what it looks like when, in the blue section, right? You'll see what it looks like when you just have ads on here and there, right? Spend is jumping and click-through rate performance is jumping. However, when you have always on, you can see the difference of when your click-through rate is consistently increasing over time. So again, just showing you the value of really being always on. It just rewards you better to have content always on. And again, it doesn't have to be at a really high spend level. It can be something that's just like our blog post that we're going to keep running because we know it's crushing it. And then I guess just some more data to show that consistently spending does actually positively impact reach. So this is from one of our clients who chose not to be named. It's a global logistics company, and we had them test it. And so switching to an always-on strategy for them actually increased their daily spend, or with increased daily spend, excuse me, by 2.5 times, actually resulted in a 3-time lift in reach. So they were able to reach a lot more people by just having that steady flow of content always on. So I mentioned the relevancy score. What is that? So the relevancy score is it's for every campaign has a relevancy score, and it's comprised of your bid and your click-through rate. So that's why you may have heard at the beginning of new campaigns, your LinkedIn rep is like, bid high. It's not because we want you to have a high CPC. It's because essentially the tool is not necessarily smart enough to say, okay, this is a new campaign, let me give it its best shot. The tool is like, okay, this click-through rate is 0. So your bid is what's really helping you win the auction at the start of new campaigns, right? And then once you get some clicks and impressions, that's when you can bring your bid down to something you're a little bit more comfortable with. So just remember that you need to bid high at the start of new campaigns, and then you can bring that bid down. And again, what we're essentially saying is, it's not just about the advertisers who have the biggest budgets, right? It's also about the advertisers who have the best content. So the relevancy score kind of keeps checks and balances in place so that advertisers who have really strong content and again are always on over time will have a really strong relevancy score and are more likely to win the auction. So I know that was a lot of trends, and at this time we're going to pause for some questions. So I'll kick it over to Renee.
Great. There are a lot of questions, so keep entering questions in as you go. We're going to try to handle and tackle as many of them as we can because Fia left us a good amount of time for this. Tying into what you just talked about with the relevancy score and always-on campaigns, Anonymous had a question, do always-on campaigns really lower your CPC, and if yes, why? I think you gave a lot of great points for why you would expect to see a slightly lower CPC with an always-on campaign. Do you mind just summing it up again?
Sure. So kind of just to cover that again. So when you are at the start of like a new campaign, right, you might have to bid really high, and that is typical. But then because you kind of if you have good, it does really depend on your content, right? It's not just saying like you can be always on with bad ads. You definitely need to have good content. But once you have that relevancy score high enough, and if you have like a steady flow of ads running, it's because of that relevancy score, because you've already built up the relevancy score so high, and because again always on keeps that relevancy score intact. That tends to be why you'll get better performance, because you're already operating at a high level with that relevancy score. So you're already winning the auction more than other advertisers who have that lower score.
Amanda, do you have any thoughts to add? If not, I have a good question to punt over to you.
I think Afia covered it all. So yeah, go ahead and shoot me the next question.
Olja, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, has a question about what our top recommended ad formats are for demand generation and lead gen campaigns and why you pick those ad formats. I'll let Amanda take it first.
Cool. That's amazing. That's actually a great question. So I would say, to speak to a little bit what Afia said earlier, like sponsored content is like one of the biggest parts of like our marketing solutions engine. So I would definitely say you always want to have sponsored content as a part of your strategy. The great news is sponsored content has like new ad formats. So for example, you can use video, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And now you can leverage sponsored content with lead gen forms. So I would definitely say sponsored content is a great one to drive leads. Another one, of course, is our text ad unit. I would say like, if you have a product offering that is a little bit more heavily leveraged on like desktop only, text ads is a really, really great option as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then we also have, I keep wanting to call it sponsored in-mail, but it's actually rebranded as our message ads. So message ads is like when you get the little in-mails in your LinkedIn inbox. That can also be a really great solution for lead generation. I would say an example of like an opportunity to use message ads would be like if you're doing anything event-based, or if you're like re-engaging an audience that you've already had some type of interaction or engagement with. So yeah, I would say my top 3 picks are going to be starting with sponsored content, text ads, and then leveraging message ads as well for lead gen. Great question.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to Amanda's point, text ads, for those of you who are worried about LinkedIn is so expensive, don't quote me on this, but I will say text ads tend to have pretty low CPCs because they're on, it's a ton of inventory for text ads. They're on like the homepage of LinkedIn, they're in the inbox on LinkedIn, they're on your profile page, so there's a ton of inventory, and they're desktop only. So that is the thing. You definitely want to have another LinkedIn ad unit running for your mobile strategy. About 80% of LinkedIn traffic, or about 2/3, I'll say, of LinkedIn traffic comes from mobile. When it comes to sponsored content, that's about 80%. So you definitely want to make sure you have a mobile strategy. But as to Amanda's point, those who have been running text ads for lead gen tend to love it because they're like, we have really low CPCs and we have a great steady flow of leads.
Yeah, I love it. And just to double down on Amanda's point and Afia, your point, it's really about tying all our products together. It's like that better together story. It's like, let's do a little bit of brand awareness with this set of products, but then let's do lead gen with message ads. So that ties into Caroline's question. Do you have any opportunities or thoughts on where advertisers can remarket better based off of customer on-site behaviors?
Ooh, where advertisers can. So I think it definitely depends on your site, right? So we have like retargeting is available on the platform, right? I would actually though recommend starting to get some more insight, starting with leveraging website demographics, which we'll talk a good bit about in this presentation. But getting access to the LinkedIn Insight tag, it's completely free. You don't have to be running any LinkedIn campaigns to get access to it. And then you can place the tag on your site or your client's site for any agencies who are listening, right? And once you get that, you can see kind of what audiences are coming to what pages on the site for those who we can match on LinkedIn. And honestly, it's a lot of people have LinkedIn profiles, right? And so I think that will really help then frame your strategy. Okay, so what pages should we be retargeting off of and things like that. So I hope that answers your question, but I would say definitely start with leveraging website demographics to then understand how you should inform your retargeting strategy once you are ready to run ads.
That's a great call out. Amanda, do you have any thoughts?
I think what Afia mentioned about website demographics is amazing. You also, I would say with retargeting, it's also good to consider what stage your audience is at in the funnel. So for example, you can retarget like based on people that have visited a certain page, which might still be more mid-funnel content where you're still giving them more information and establishing brand presence. But also keep in mind, you can leverage retargeting by people who have actually taken some type of action on their website. So whether it's people who have filled out a lead gen form or people who have actually converted on your website, you can retarget based on those people as well. So I would just make sure you consider where your potential customers are at in that buying process.
Yeah, that's also a really great point. JC just submitted a question about lead gen campaigns and just excluding leads in general that have already filled out the form, or maybe they hit like a thank you page. You can exclude any website visitor that's hit a thank you page, if you have some type of thank you URL code, as well as you can connect your lead gen forms or our campaigns targeting segments to your CRM so that we don't target your existing customers with a prospecting ad. So that will definitely save you a good bit of money as well. So great question, JC. There is also another question. Since we're on the topic of targeting lists, someone was wondering why our matched audiences lists need to be over 300 to match.
Oh, great question. Go ahead, Amanda.
I can take that. Yeah, thanks, Sophia. I was going to say, we'll talk a little bit more about ABM and matched audience strategy later on in the presentation. But the reason why we have that 300 member threshold, because one thing that's really important with marketing on LinkedIn is scale. Our platform is an opportunity to reach professionals at scale. So it's really hard to drive success when your audiences are really, really niche and too small, especially when you think about other competitors that are reaching those same people on the platform. So we aim for that 300 member and above to make sure that you're getting the most out of the targeting. I wouldn't say, I can't necessarily go on record to say this, but I wouldn't say LinkedIn marketing is like what you want to leverage for like a more one-to-one strategy. You want to think about how you can reach those customers or those accounts at scale. So that's why we set those minimums in place. It's really to make sure that the budget you're spending on the people in that list is going in the right direction, and to make sure that you actually have the inventory and the scale to spend it.
Absolutely. And I'll just add to that. Also, we are really big on member privacy, right? So we don't want you to be able to upload a list of 50 people that you want to target, and only one of them lives in Ohio, and then you get to look at your campaign demographics and you're like, oh, I know that's Jim because he's the only one from Ohio, right? So member privacy is really important to us, right? So we want to make sure like people can't necessarily back into those exact members, because we always want to protect members and their data.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I'm thinking we'll do one more question before we jump into the break. Lynette has a question about how we would advise measuring whether content is relevant.
How would we advise measuring whether the content is relevant? Great question, Lynette. I'd say definitely take a look at your click-through rate, early on indicators of click-through rate. Seeing kind of if content, definitely like in terms of your audience, you want to make sure your audience is the right audience for that content for sure. But if you see that, if you have the right audience and you see that your content's just not hitting, I think click-through rate's a really good indicator of kind of, are people even engaged with this?
Yeah, and I would say to piggyback off of that, if you want a little bit more specific guidance on like how to know if your click-through rate is strong, the typical benchmark that we communicate to clients marketing on LinkedIn is you want your click-through rate to at least be above like a 0.40% or higher. So that's a good way to kind of measure it from a benchmark perspective if you're doing well. And I think to go back to what Afia said is relevancy score is really important. Also keeping in mind your bidding strategy. A lot of times, if you've been running your campaign continuously and your click-through rates are high, if the algorithm sees that your click-through rates are high, your ad's more likely to show up. And in turn, the goal is to not require you to pay as high of a cost per click. So another indicator you can look at is if you have your bid set at, let's say you're bidding $12 cost per click, but your average cost per click is maybe at like $7 or $8. That's also a really good sign. If you're not having to pay the maximum price every single time someone clicks on your ad, that's another indicator of ad relevance to your audience.
Great call out. Cool. With that, I think we will kick it over to a quick break. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. There's a lot in store in the second half of today's presentation, but we want to give you a quick moment to sit and digest, let all these great trends that Afia just presented, just like figure out if these are the right trends for your strategies. In this 5-minute break, we're going to play a couple commercial break videos, and I would love if you hashtag LinkedIn Marketing Labs with that. We're going to take a quick break. See you in 5 minutes.
LinkedIn lead gen forms are a great solution for marketers looking for qualified leads. Lead gen forms are customizable, pre-filled forms with a prospect's LinkedIn profile data that can be added to your sponsored content or sponsored in-mail ad. So, how can lead gen forms help you and your business? At a glance, lead gen forms help marketers collect high-quality leads at scale. They provide a simple way for companies to gather the data they need to qualify a lead in one click from a member on LinkedIn. They also make it easy to track the ROI of your LinkedIn campaigns with cost per lead, form fill rates, and conversion rate reporting. You can use lead gen forms to deliver content like white papers and ebooks, share an event sign-up, generate newsletter sign-ups, provide discounts, and more.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us after this break. Now we'll just jump right back in. We have a lot of really good content, and I want to make sure I get to all your great questions later on. We're going to jump right in, and Afia is going to take it away with targeting strategies.
Thank you. So let's get into targeting strategies, or if you see me present this live, I often call this audience strategies. And the first one is called Start With Who. So a lot of marketers today are like, marketing's customer-centric, but it's actually not. And the data shows that, and this is actually an InfoLink study, and 3% of buyers say that, only 3% of buyers, I should be saying, say that advertising is relevant to them, right? So that's a huge problem. And the actual brands who are customer-centric are getting it right by being really individualistic. So think about brands like Netflix and Spotify and Amazon, who are offering these really individualized experiences, right? So how are they doing that? You might not even realize how individualistic it is. So I'm a rom-com girl. I love movies like Serendipity, While You Were Sleeping, probably everything made by J-Lo. And so when Netflix serves me up Good Will Hunting, they're gonna serve me the image of Matt Damon leaning in to kiss Minnie Driver because they know that's totally gonna capture my heart, and that's why I'm gonna watch the movie. Now, my husband, he's a comedy guy. He likes things like Arrested Development, Zoolander, Anger Management, right? So when Netflix serves up Good Will Hunting to him, they're gonna show him Robin Williams, right? Because they know that's gonna hook him into watching this movie. Pretty cool, right? I did not know this before we put together this presentation. So how does that happen in the B2B world, right? Well, a lot of B2B personas are not super individualistic. A lot of B2B personas are built by guesswork. They're informed by guesswork. So things like having Rachel from research or Sarah from sales or Peter from procurement. I always like to make this a little bit more inclusive by saying Pedro from procurement and Chantel from sales, right? So we build these we build these personas informed by guesswork, right? Sales and marketing might get together and they'll say, hey, what are some personas? And maybe they're getting together like once a year, right? If that. That's not really great. We need to be a little bit more agile. And LinkedIn can actually help you build personas based on data. So leveraging things like website demographics, which I actually referenced earlier, and we'll talk a little bit more, and things like content suggestions that Amanda talked about, by really understanding what is my audience engaging with and how can I reach them in the right way. So this is kind of that first step towards that Netflix level of individualism. And I'm going to go through actually in this section 4 different tools for data-driven personas. I won't touch on Lookalike in detail because Amanda will actually cover that a little bit later. And it's also a little bit more self-explanatory, but I will touch on website demographics, campaign demographics, as well as content suggestions. So let's actually start with campaign demographics. So campaign demographics are when you actually have a LinkedIn campaign running and looking to see at who's clicking on my ads. So you get to see demographic information about who's clicking on your ads by a lot of the different professional traits that we offer you to target by. So things like company name, you'll be able to see what industries are clicking on my ads, what specific job functions and titles. So we definitely recommend looking at this early campaign, mid-campaign, at the end of campaign to help you better make optimizations, right? And kind of ways that you can do that, as I mentioned, is making optimizations, leveraging campaign demographics, right? So you may look at your campaign demographics and say, oh, actually, I see that, product managers and software engineers are 2 audiences we really want to reach, but product managers are actually crushing it a little bit more. So let's exclude software engineers, let's exclude product managers to be a separate campaign where we push more budget towards them, right? So that might be an example on how you want to double down on an audience. Or you might want to say, we realize a lot of our own company is clicking on our ads, so let's exclude that company and our sister companies moving forward, right? So campaign demographics can be super helpful to make those optimizations in real time. Now moving to website demographics. So website demographics, I already mentioned, is when you are not running any campaigns, or you don't have to be running any campaigns, I should say, and it's a completely free tool. So you can leverage the LinkedIn Insight tag and place it on your site, or if you're an agency, your client's site, to get better understanding of who's visiting that site. And you can filter that traffic by 8 of our different professional traits. So 8 of the different audience traits, things like job title, seniority, function, etc. So ways that you would leverage website demographics, there's actually a lot of different ways to leverage website demographics. You can understand, okay, like, is let's say you aren't even running LinkedIn campaigns, right? Because again, this is a free tool and you want to say, let me verify that the audience that I'm getting is the right audience from this landing page. Maybe you're driving Facebook campaigns or Twitter campaigns to a specific landing page and you put website demographics on that landing page to understand if you're actually getting the right people, and then you can go make optimizations on those campaigns. You could also leverage it to say, okay, so like by building page sets and saying, okay, so we know that software engineers love the resources page of our site, and product managers are really going to the About Us. So maybe software engineers are a little bit more primed for like an ad that's about a demo, an ad that's like contact sales, because they're already going to resources to find out more. So again, we'll help you understand kind of what content to put out. And then lastly, definitely will help you understand how to retarget, right? So if you know that a mass amount of audiences are going to a specific page, you can definitely decide, let's retarget off of the contact us page, let's retarget off of the entire home page, and also can help you uncover new audiences. So let's say you're, in this example, the hypothesis is, okay, so and actually that first example I talked about, let's see if LinkedIn is driving higher quality traffic than, let's say, our Facebook or our Twitter campaign. And you would put website demographics on all those different landing pages, set them up as pages in the Campaign Manager tool, and see which audiences are coming to those pages so you can kind of test and compare, right? And so exactly what I'm talking about, you would label, you can create those page sets and you could actually label them. So let's say you label this like my LinkedIn landing pages or my Facebook landing pages. In another example, this could be the resource and contact us page you're labeling as engaged users. So you know you're going to create a retargeting campaign off of those engaged users later on. And so what the great thing is about website demographics is it's, even though if you're running it pre-campaign, once you actually do start running a campaign, you'll actually see your campaign results in line with your website demographics, which is really cool. And so I already kind of spoke to this, but will definitely help you understand how to uncover new audiences. So I think this is really awesome for agencies who want to be kind of like a trusted advisor to their clients. You can say, hey, guess what? We've got this LinkedIn Insight tag. Let's put it on your site and let's figure out let's validate the audiences that you say you need to reach, and maybe you'll help them even uncover some new audiences, right? And a great thing about website demographics is it doesn't slow down the site. The tag does not slow down the site. I think a lot of people get questions about, well, my client's a financial client and they don't put anything on their site. The great thing is we have a lot of resources in our help center that helps you place the tag in different tag managers. It has a lot of information about the tag living on the site, so you can leverage things like website demographics and retargeting. So now let's get into content suggestions. So Amanda already spoke to this, so I'm only going to speak to it on high level, but this is another great tool, again, that will help you get to that Netflix level of personalization, right? So understanding what content, and this is actually only available for company page admins, I will caveat, but if you are admin of your company page or your client's company page, you do have access to this tool. And so what you can do is say, okay, from followers of this company page, what content, what topics are they engaging with? And you can see that and actually share that content to your company page in real time. So that's really cool. But then aside from that, you can also say, I already know what my followers are interested. What about this specific target audience? So you can build a target audience and see what content they're engaging with, what topics they're engaging with, and then again, share that content directly onto your company page. So we make it really easy for you to reach people with the right messages in the right time, right? Moving on to the next trend, and this one is called media value investing. So I often, when I present this, I'll say, someone give me probably the most famous investor of our time. At first people are like, I don't know, and then I say, show me Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett is wildly successful, and we know that Warren Buffett is successful because he does something that we call looking at undervalued assets. So Warren Buffett will say, you know what, I'm going to look at stuff that people don't really know about yet, and I know that's great quality, and I'm going to invest heavily in it. I'm going to invest a lot in it so that when it is booming and people know about it, I'm making a lot of money, right? Great, we need to follow Warren Buffett so we can all be like him, right? So how do we do this in B2B marketing or in marketing overall, right? Well, that's looking at our undervalued audiences. So we know, because we're LinkedIn, that about 24% of impressions reach individual contributors. So about a fourth of your impressions are reaching ICs. So it's important to have a strategy around ICs. However, this audience continuously is ignored, right? However, they influence buying decisions. About 55%, half of the buying committee tends to be individual contributors. And we also know that because we're LinkedIn, individual contributors take about 3 years to become that decision maker. Well, guess what? When it comes to the deal process in B2B, that can almost take up to 3 years as well. So think about how you can have a strategy to engage these people. And that might mean broadening your targeting. So we've said it a few times already in this presentation, but on LinkedIn, we're all about scale and we're all about starting broad, right? So broaden your horizon beyond that C-suite, beyond that niche key target audience, and target the entire committee. And so some more data that we wanted to provide you with to better understand why you should leverage that entire buying committee. Right now, up to 17 people are involved in that purchase decision for enterprise technology companies, right? That's compared to 10 in 2011. So up to 17 people could have say. So you definitely need to make sure you're influencing at least majority of those 17 people, right? And 45% of tech decision makers actually work outside of IT in these other functions. And that last stat speaks to it. There are now 4 or more functions involved in that purchase decision-making process, right? So really important, again, to understand that full committee, and tools that we're building that Amanda touched on earlier, like the ABM buyers group, audience templates, will really help you get at targeting that full committee and understanding who sits within that committee, as well as audience insights. So an example of kind of what broadening your targeting could look like on LinkedIn. On the left-hand side, this is like a really niche target audience, ITDN. So they're reaching the IT industry and they are looking at seniorities director plus, right? However, on the right-hand side, just by opening up that seniority level, they opened up their target audience by a lot. So again, just a really easy example of how just opening up that seniority level can get you much more scale, and then look at things like campaign demographics over time to refine later on. So now I'm actually going to hand it over to Amanda, who's going to take you through some tools for account-based marketing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Afia. So we'll talk a little bit more in detail about account-based marketing. I know we had some questions earlier about uploading lists and account size minimum. So we'll get into the tools and then talk about a little bit about the strategy of how to run a successful account-based marketing plan on LinkedIn. So when we think about like the makeup of our matched audiences, the way you can customize your targeting falls into 4 different buckets. There's website retargeting, where you can actually re-engage visitors based on pages they visited on your website or actions they've taken on your website. You can also upload lists of either key contacts, email contacts, or specific companies or accounts that you'd like to target. And then last but not least, which we touched on a little earlier during the product roadmap, is lookalike targeting, where you can find new audience opportunities by finding people that are similar to audiences that you're already reaching. So when I think about different examples, like I get a lot of questions from clients that say, well, how do I know which one to use? So we'll talk about some different scenarios that you might want to use all 4 of these for. So website retargeting. I love talking about website retargeting because I am that customer that they always get me. So I don't know if you guys, anyone out there is avid online shoppers like myself, but I am the queen of like, I'll go to like Nordstrom's website or H&M's website and I'll put something in my cart, or I'll view a bunch of products. And then if I don't decide to buy at that time, the ad will like follow me around on the internet. I'll be on Facebook and I'll see a pair of shoes that I liked, or I'll be on Instagram and I'll see, maybe a dress that I liked. So website retargeting is a way to re-engage your website visitors. For example, if you're promoting something like a free trial, if you're promoting a webinar, ebook. So website retargeting, think about ways to re-engage your audience. For email contact targeting, you can actually upload a list of either client prospects, existing customers that you'd like to reach. You can upload that list and either target them directly. Contact targeting can also be used for exclusion. So let's say that you have a list of leads that have already been engaged and nurtured by your sales team. You can actually upload that list and use it as an exclusion so that you're not reaching people that have already engaged. Account targeting is where you can target actual specific companies. You can target them based on the industry they fall in, or let's say you're targeting a list of companies and you want to reach people in the certain departments. That's a cool way that you can leverage ABM. And then last but not least is lookalike targeting, where you can actually create a list that of members that have very similar attributes that to either website list that you've already created based on retargeting, or email or account lists. So we'll walk through some of these in more detail. So one common question I get is, what's the difference between audience expansion and lookalike audience? So audience expansion is when if any of you out there have actually created a campaign, you'll see like a little checkbox at the bottom after you build out your targeting. And we get a lot of questions like, what's the difference? So with audience expansion and lookalike audiences, these are both opportunities to help scale your campaign. So with audience expansion, you're actually able to pick up members that might be adjacent to who you're actually already reaching. This helps to make sure that we're not missing out on anyone, making sure that we're maximizing reach. With lookalike audiences, it's a little bit more specific. It complements an existing list of website visitors or specific account or contact lists. This can be really, really essential if you are running campaigns that have the lead gen objective, where you might want to focus on expanding that audience, or you want to figure out a creative way to expand your reach without opening the floodgates too wide. So if you think about common scenarios where you'd like to use audience expansion, I would say if you are leveraging targeting that's a little bit more niche and specific, so specific job titles, specific skills, specific LinkedIn groups, I would say audience expansion is another great option if you're running a campaign that's more focused on top of funnel initiatives, so brand awareness, engagement, consideration. Lookalike audiences can be really useful when you have a really, really high quality audience. One thing that I commonly recommend to my clients is if you have a list of existing clients that are the ideal personas of who you want to reach, uploading that to your campaign manager account and creating a lookalike based off of that can be really, really effective and efficient. And it makes sure that we're reaching people that maybe you don't even know are out there. Also, lookalike audiences, if you have to be a little bit more specific or you have certain parameters that you have to stay within, lookalike audiences are a great way to create that additional scale that Afia was talking about earlier, without opening the floodgates too wide and inviting people in that maybe are not within that ideal target persona. And then when we think about matched audiences, you really want to consider what are your goals at the different stage of a funnel. So there was a coworker of mine a few years ago gave the greatest example. I was listening to one of her client calls, and her client was dead set on using matched audiences specifically for acquisition, targeting people that may or may not have ever heard of this brand or this product before. And so she asked the client, if you invited someone out on a first date, would you ask them to marry you on that same first date? So I know it's kind of a funny example, but you want to make sure that you are considering where your audience is. Awareness. Do they know who you are? Engagement and consideration. How are you engaging with your audience? What assets are you providing them? How are you educating them on your product, your service? What sets you apart from the rest? And then, of course, that last stage is acquisition, when they've been primed and they're ready to make that buying decision. So you really want to define your audience strategy based on where they are in the buyer's journey. So with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to tailor your content for your ABM strategy. So this slide just shows an example of ways you can position your value with your audience, and then 3 examples of what your particular objective or goal could be for that campaign. So a couple of examples of value proposition is, how you can help accelerate their strategy internally, how you can make their processes more efficient, getting deeper on the education side and making sure that this audience is well aware of your product, how to use it and how it's going to benefit them. And then making sure that your brand is visible and recognizable on LinkedIn, because you have to remember the paid element is one portion of it, but they're also going to see your brand elsewhere, on whatever other marketing tools that you're using, on LinkedIn itself. So those are 3 things to just keep in mind, making sure that you're highlighting your value proposition. And then when we think about goals, a couple of examples could be if you're upselling and you're if you want to up or cross sell your clients, so let's say you have an existing list of customers that are already engaged, how do we want to up level that conversation? Maybe you want to reach more of their leadership team. Maybe you want to crack into some different lines of businesses that you have not already, or maybe you want to help them expand their product suite. It could also be a goal to protect revenue. So how do you position yourself as a strategic partner? And then, helping them understand, like, for example, you can develop a playbook on how, your client can protect revenue, or how using your product or service can help them do that. And then another example could be marketing efficiency. So prioritizing what you're investing into your marketing based on the different tiers that this audience members could be at. So if you're using an account, if these are enterprise level, account lists, enterprise level, if these are specific clients, had they spoken to a salesperson, how can we leverage ABM to make sure that we're engaging them properly and prioritizing them properly as well? So when we think about 3 different campaign objectives that we can leverage for ABM, we can think about usage. So if we want to increase the usage of a product or service, expanding that, like we talked about earlier, cracking into new lines of business, or new departments or people that are not yet using the product or service. And then last but not least, adoption, which can be twofold. Adoption can be for brand net new clients that have not yet adopted, or if we want to add additional products to the mix of what they're already using. So we'll dive into some more specific examples. This example is increasing usage. So the ads that you see on the right are from a couple of LinkedIn marketing solutions and Microsoft ads. So the tactics we used here, and we talk about tactics, it's like, what type of ad unit do we want to use? So in this case, we use sponsored content and display ads, which is an older ad unit that we used to have. And the type of content were product tips, guides, and videos. So remember, our goal is to increase the usage of the product by positioning that additional value proposition. One question we get is like, how do we understand how to measure this? So in this case, we would measure it based on like engagement rate, number of site visits, time spent on site, or even if you want to take a look at a specific account and figure out how much the original deal size was to how much that's actually grown after you've engaged that audience a little bit more. One plug that I want to make is just when we think about, I've actually spoke to a person from my insights team that gave me this advice. When you think about the nurturing process, he actually told me some really good advice about, if you think about how long your buying cycle is, so if your buying cycle or sales cycle is 6 months, take that timeline as a soft sort of guideline on how long you'll need to nurture or stay in front of your audience, maybe before they're ready to make that decision or before they're ready to up-level that conversation. We get that question a lot. Like, how do I know how long to implement these strategies? So consider your sales cycle and consider the fact that it can take some time. This slide focuses on LinkedIn marketing and what our onboarding process looks like, or our process to acquire new customers. So we always start off with education. Again, we want them to know who we are. We want them to know what we bring to the table, what's our product suite, what's our value proposition, to make sure that they feel good from a knowledge perspective. And the second is going to be engagement. So you see, there's a couple of different examples here. Like we had a video ad running. There was a guide that we rolled out a few years back called the LinkedIn Secret Sauce. We rolled out a series on marketing stories. And one thing I want to point out here too is that brand consistency is something that's really, really important, whether it's from the logo that you use in your ads, the color scheme, or even if it's something more like a series. So for example, if a great marketing story, if you have 1 to 3 editions of that, rolling those out on a continuous basis is always a really good strategy to stay in front of your audience and make sure that brand recognition is it's top of mind for them. And then last but not least is adoption. So the 3 ads you see on the right are actually leading to forms where they can actually submit their information and get more details, or we're actually providing an asset. I think Afia spoke to it earlier. We sometimes call those gated assets, where you're actually ready to ask your audience member for information to lead them in the direction of actually adopting the product or service that you're promoting. Another example is expanding into new markets or new lines of business. So like in this example, we leveraged sponsored content as the ad unit. So in this case, we promoted a gated ebook. And when I say gated, that just means that the customer has to give something before they get the asset, which is usually their name, information, email, ways for you or your sales team to be able to follow up with that lead. The way we would be able to measure that is finding out how much reach we have within those accounts, counting the number of leads or website conversions. And I also highly, highly encourage making sure that if you are a marketer, making sure that you align with your sales team. Your sales team, sales and marketing alignment is huge so that you can kind of figure out what conversations they're having as those leads get passed through to them. That'll also give a lot of insight on targeting and making sure that you're reaching the right people. And then when we think about a strategy, this is an example of a tactic we could use to get maybe some existing clients to adopt new features. So in this case, we have like carousel ads, which is our sponsored content ad unit, where you can actually use different cards or tiers to tell a story or promote different offerings within the same ad unit. Event invitations, which can be leveraged through our message ad. Message ads are really, really good for any type of event marketing. And then, of course, sponsored video, which is always a great ad unit for engagement. In this case, the content we were promoting would be like webinars and events that are upcoming, product previews, which I know people get really excited about, case studies. And then in terms of a measurement, we always want to make sure that we can, if there's a way for you guys to measure in-product activity, whether that's percent adopted, number of free trials utilized, webinar registrations, and then of course measuring the reach that you get with an account, within each specific account or with those specific contacts. And so the other thing, to go back to the point earlier that I made about making sure that the marketing teams and the sales teams are aligned, it's really important to have the conversation with your sales team about what their goals are. What are their goals for usage and product adoption? What are their goals for expanding? Is it a numeric goal? Is it a percentage growth goal? If you have a good understanding of what your sales team's goals are, it's really, really important that marketing and sales are aligned. So this is just a guideline, making sure that, everybody's on the same page. All right, so we'll roll into our next round of Q&A. I'm sure you guys, that was a lot of content we threw at you, so I'm sure you guys have a lot. So feel free to put those in on the Slido.
Awesome. I think we're getting too many questions actually, but to keep us on track on time right now, I'm going to pass it over and just keep rolling with content, and we'll save more time at the end for questions. Cool. I believe we are doing ad format strategies now, and that should be with Amanda.
Awesome. Cool. So a couple of the ad formats that we want to highlight, of course, one of them is sponsored video, which we've talked a little bit about throughout the presentation. So sponsored video's been out for a while, but we do have the new Moat integration. Moat is one of our partners, which allows you to see a little bit more details about your video viewability and those more advanced video tracking metrics. So that's definitely a plug that we want to make that's now available. Sponsored video, I would say one thing that I really want to make sure I point out, I think there's a misconception among marketers that video can only be used for top funnel brand awareness initiatives. That's actually not true. I have a lot of clients that leverage sponsored video for their lead gen efforts. In terms of just like how the experience that members have on the platform is, it auto plays on mute. So you want to make sure that visually your video is captivating. It's based on, it shows on mobile and desktop, which is really exciting. We now have a lead gen form integration. So you actually are able to use, after a member watches a video, they can click through and fill out their information. And then there's some information here on these slides about the different benchmarks. VTR stands for view through rate, and then the average completion rates as well. Again, just so you have some guidelines on metrics for success. Again, just thinking about what we can leverage video for. It's a great way to drive engagement and generate leads. our tool actually provides those video metrics as well. So you can see the completion rates, the click-through rates. Also, I can't like say this officially on the record, but with video, you actually have the option to bid on a cost per view basis, which typically can be a little less expensive than standard sponsored content. And one thing I will say in terms of like video, when you think about putting it together, we find that the sweet spot is usually between the like 10 and 30-second mark. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind as a guideline. And so another misconception, like when we first rolled out video, when we would present it to marketers and say like, hey, this is a really great new ad unit, we had a lot of like feedback that there were like fears that there were like this high production cost. Like we have to get this like Hollywood studio, hire this production team, high quality cameras. You actually don't have to worry that that's going to be a limitation. So if you notice on the left side, there's some examples of like very low production cost videos, like providing a slideshow, event coverage. Even one of our senior leaders here at LinkedIn, Penry Price, did a series where he would record himself like a day in the life every day walking to work right on his iPhone. So you can produce high quality video and it doesn't necessarily have to be at a high production cost, which we know takes a longer time to produce. Now, if you do have videos in your arsenal that are on the more high production cost side, I would say, let's figure out how we can use them. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. One example here is John Colebrook, who is an A&R like expert. He actually recorded a demo right on his iPhone. He showed like how you can use the technology. Instead of it being distributed by like a company, it's distributed by one of the subject matter experts, which makes it a little bit more personable. He did it right on his iPhone. Again, low production cost, something that's easy to create and easy to use as a sponsored post. American Express is another client that did a really cool video campaign. So in this case, they had a partnership with an organization called Parley for the Oceans, where they were working with them to promote awareness on plastic pollution. And so again, you may not expect that from something like American Express. So when you think about the subject of the content, remember, there's people on LinkedIn. We like to laugh. We like to hear about real issues. It doesn't always have to be, so heavily focused on like the formal and business side. So when you think about your content arsenal, consider promoting things like that as well. Great way to establish brand presence and also establish really good brand recognition and credibility. Again, to go back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of like a sweet spot. So I would say, again, that 10 to 30-second mark is where we find the sweet spot in terms of the highest engagement, highest completions for videos. And also consider running it like a series. So LinkedIn ran a campaign where we had LinkedIn's marketing minutes. So we promoted sponsored video that were like 8-second teasers videos. And then once the members clicked through to the website, there was the longer, the 60-second marketing minute that they could watch. So I always tell my customers, think about like when you watch a commercial or a trailer for a video, it incentivizes you to maybe go to the theater or look it up on your TV to watch the full version. You can structure your ad campaigns the same way. Give the teaser on the ad and then maybe provide the full video or the full experience when they actually get to your landing page. And then our carousel ad format. So as I mentioned earlier, this is one of our sponsored ad units where you can actually upload 7 different images. So whether you want to tell a story or promote like a few different products, we have a maximum of 10 what they call cards. I usually recommend keeping it to between 2 and 5. Again, just considering user experience. All languages are currently supported, and we also do have the lead gen form integration for carousel ads as well. So this is a great ad unit if you want to either tell a story or showcase multiple options and offerings that you have. This is a really great ad unit to use. And then this just kind of breaks down like an example of how you would build out a carousel ad. So like, you upload your images and you can select different headlines, which is a great way for you to kind of control how the story is told. We actually ran a pilot before carousel ads rolled out. We did a beta, and we actually saw that using carousel ads to tell a story helped boost our engagement and click-through rate by 16%, which is huge. And then dynamic ads. I get a lot of questions on like, what's the most customized ad unit we can leverage on LinkedIn? So dynamic ads is a really great way to personalize your creative and be able to resonate with like your target audience. So you guys have probably seen dynamic ads pop up on your LinkedIn timeline. If you guys ever see like the little ad with your profile picture in it, that is a dynamic ad. Dynamic ads can be amazing to build brand awareness. We have a particular unit within that called follower ads. So if you want to generate more followers to your company page, we also do have a lead gen form integration with dynamic ads. So it can be also amazing to generate those leads, where not only can you collect, you can have members submit their data, but you can actually have them download an asset like an ebook or a white paper right from the ad unit. And then last but not least, it's really great for driving conversions. You can build dynamic ads to take them right to your website and encourage them to convert there as well. Again, the personalization element is really the value proposition with dynamic ads. We actually we did a pilot to see like what would go over better using like the LinkedIn logo or actually using pictures of employees that work here. That's actually one of my friends on the left, Cassandra. Hey, Cassandra. So what we saw was there was a 326% lift overall in performance, and we were measuring click-through rate and engagement rate when we used an image of like a member as opposed to our logo. So again, that personalization goes really, really far. And it's a great way to have fun with your image, whether it's with your ad, whether it's with the image or with the messaging itself. We also highly encourage you to use conversion tracking, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation, to make sure that we're able to measure what actions you're taking when your members or when your audience sees themselves in your ad.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. I have one fun thing to call out about dynamic ads is that now the background image doesn't have to be just white. I saw a really, really well done dynamic ad the other day where the background image was like colorful. I screenshotted that one, so I wish I knew the brand so I could call it out. We have a lot of great questions, so I'll take a couple now. So we talked a little bit about carousel ads. Travis is wondering whether carousel ads will be available on desktop or if it is already.
Carousel ads are available on desktop and mobile. All of our ad formats, with the exception of dynamic ads and text ads, are available on desktop and mobile. For dynamic and text, it's just desktop.
Yes, I knew you would know that off the top of your head. Incredible. Alex, since we talked a lot about text ads today, Alex had a lot of good questions about text ads and when they're most effective. So Alex was wondering, would text ads be more effective on the upper mid-funnel? And then what's the general response rate we see?
That's a good question. Amanda, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can start off with that. So Afia mentioned earlier, she made a great point about text ads being a more cost-efficient ad unit. The more common stages of the funnel that I see them used in is like the mid to low funnel. So if you are collecting like information on a website or tracking conversions or leads. So I would say like if you are seeing or having any challenges with like your overall cost per lead or cost per conversion, text ads can be a really great solution. I also say text ads can be a great ad unit to use if what you're offering. So let's say that you're offering like a product demo, something that is a little bit more easy to consume on desktop or on a laptop, promoting that particular offering via text ads can just make sure that at least your audience is, using the device since it is a desktop only ad unit. I also find that it works really well in conjunction with sponsored content. So as Renee mentioned earlier, you don't have to pick one, you can do both. So if you're let's say you're running sponsored content, running text ads simultaneously, even if it's for the same offering, can be really effective, and it'll allow you to see which ad unit's driving a lower cost per lead overall for you.
Awesome. And then one follow-up question from Marcelo right now. Will dynamic ads be available self-service? I believe they are.
Yes. So dynamic ads, I believe they are already. We just recently rolled them out available self-service. So if you don't have it, it should be coming to your campaign manager instance pretty soon.
Awesome. And I actually saw one more question about video ads. Do we have the opportunity right now with video ads to upload subtitles, or is that something that needs to be in the video?
Yes, so we recently rolled out the opportunity to upload captions and like subtitles as a file. So absolutely, and you can get more information on how to do that via the LinkedIn Help Center.
Awesome. With that, I believe, Afia, you are up next with all of our additional features.
Let's take it home, guys. So now we're going to talk about additional features for success. Like, what else can you do aside from all the great stuff that we offered you? So we'd be remiss to not offer conversion tracking, or not talk about, I should say, conversion tracking, right? Because obviously it's something that you should be doing. So why should you use LinkedIn's conversion tracking? Because I know that you guys are likely tracking conversions on a lot of other platforms. Well, I think it just helps, make you a little bit more agile as a marketer on LinkedIn. So for example, you get to see more complete metrics with conversion tracking. A lot of other platforms are not allowing you post-view conversions, and we offer those post-view conversions as well. At both, you can optimize at both the campaign and the creative level, and we tend to have more accurate counts for conversions. Also, you can unlock other features. So by mention the insight tag, conversion tracking is also powered by that same insight tag. So one insight tag powers conversion tracking, website demographics, retargeting, right? So because you're leveraging the insight tag for conversion tracking, if you weren't accessing those other features, that's now available to you. You've unlocked those other features. So definitely gives you access to other cool things you can do within Campaign Manager. And then lastly, this is, I think, kind of the most important point where it comes to being a little bit more agile. You'll see conversions in real time with your performance, right? So looking at campaign demographics and website demographics, if you are running conversion tracking on LinkedIn, then you'll see, okay, so maybe software engineers had the highest click-through rate, but product managers might have a slightly less click-through rate, but a higher conversion rate, right? So you'll get those insights in real time that might be a little bit harder when you're comparing two different systems. So I want to take you guys kind of through how our conversion tracking looks like in Campaign Manager. And this is how you would set up that conversion action. So once you've placed the tag on the site, you've seen that it's been verified, you'd go in and set up specific conversion actions, and you'd be able to select a conversion type. So whether it's like an add to cart, whether it's a purchase, a download, things like that. And you can actually assign a value. So let's say if you're a really performance-driven marketer and you know, okay, actually a conversion equates to this cost for our business, you can actually subscribe that in the tool and then see your return on ad spend when you're looking at your performance metrics. And then lastly, we do offer the ability to leverage a conversion window, and right now that's 7 and 30 days. And so there are two ways to track conversion. So I think most commonly folks will create that conversion action. So they'll pick the type, they'll include that conversion window, and then that last piece of creating that conversion action will be, what's the landing page URL? So that's usually the thank you page URL. And so the insight tag will fire once someone gets to that URL. That being said, we know not everyone has thank you pages, right? And it also doesn't work for PDFs. So let's say after they submit their information, it takes them to a page that's a PDF, you would have to use something different. And so we offer something called the event-specific image pixel. Once you're in that conversion setup process, at the end, if you're like, oh, actually, I don't have a thank you page, you can select the event-specific image pixel. It'll spit out a small piece of code that you then put on like the button of a form. Also, cool hack, like people also use that image pixel for like different parts of the form. So really savvy marketers will say, no, I want to track maybe even if they haven't completed the entire form, I want to track certain parts of the form or certain parts of my page. So another cool thing to leverage the event-specific image pixel for. So we talked a good bit about lead gen forms in this presentation, this conversation, but I also want to talk about conversion tracking and kind of how the two are different. So lead gen forms is keeping your audience on the LinkedIn platform. So that's why we tend to see really strong conversion rates with lead gen forms, anywhere from like 5 to 15%, and that's probably me being conservative for some advertisers. So lead gen forms does keep the person on the LinkedIn platform. So whether it's a sponsored content ad, sponsored video, message ad, when they click on filling out their information, it's still within the LinkedIn environment. Conversion tracking is when you send them to the client's landing page, or if you are the client yourself, you send them to your landing page, right? So that's kind of a little bit different. And then with conversion tracking, you do get the opportunity to assign different types of leads. So because we allow you to pick that conversion type, you kind of see the breakdown with what are my purchases versus my add to carts, right? So that's another option with conversion tracking if you want to be a little bit more savvy in that way. Both are mobile and desktop. With lead conversion tracking is available for all of our products. You can even put them on text ads. However, with lead gen forms, you cannot put, or excuse me, with text ads, you cannot put a lead gen form. Text ads, simple solution. It would be really weird, honestly, if we offered a lead gen form with that. And then lastly, conversion tracking is the thing that does require you to put the inside tag on the client's site, or if you are the client on your site, we recommend putting it in the global header or footer of your site. It can be placed on specific landing pages, but honestly, conversion tracking does require you to put that inside tag. So if there's a lot of pushback from clients that you're working with, or if you're having a hard time putting on the site, again, you shouldn't be, because we have a lot of resources that can help you. That might be when you want to leverage lead gen forms. So I'm going to kind of try to speed through the rest of this, because I know we're almost at time, and I want to make sure that you guys have some questions or have time for questions. So let's talk about how you use conversion tracking data, right? So when you have conversion tracking implemented, what are some things that you would look at? Well, we offer, I mentioned view through conversions. We also offer conversion rate as well as post-click conversion. So you can see all of those things. On the slide here, view through and conversion rate are swapped, but you know what we mean. And also you can see things at the performance level. You can see your conversions. And then when you click on a separate tab, we also offer like a separate tab to see your conversions and your leads views. So if you're leveraging lead gen forms, they are separate things. Conversions, and then if it's lead gen forms, it will be leads. So just kind of keep that in mind. And then again, if you're not using conversion tracking, right, these are the only things you have available to you. So things like leading metrics like click-through rate and engagement, some of those lagging metrics like cost per click, right? But conversion tracking gives you a lot more robust metrics as the ones I showed you earlier. So definitely leverage conversion tracking. I think it'll just make your lives a little bit more easier. But let's do a deeper dive into lead gen forms. So again, we talked a good bit about it, but what does it actually look like? Well, lead gen forms, you can attach them to sponsored content, sponsored email, as well as we have a variation for dynamic ads. And lead gen forms are really great for keeping the conversation on LinkedIn. We do see strong conversion rates, and because I think honestly, with conversion tracking, it is like taking someone out of the LinkedIn app when they're on mobile, so it is a little bit more of a barrier. Lead gen forms are great for mobile, right? Because it's keeping someone right within that LinkedIn app. And you can download your leads directly from the Campaign Manager tool. Actually, let me go back a slide, because I just want to show you guys what the lead gen form looks like itself. So this is an example of the lead gen form on sponsored content. They'd click that sign up, and then it takes them to a form pre-populated with their information. I'll tell you a little bit more about the fields, but then there's actually a third screen that's like the thank you message that you can customize. So I think we have an image of that later on in these slides.
Yeah, one thing to add and to give you a little breathing room to drink some water, I love lead gen forms because sometimes you don't have a full web team to build out a landing page for every single piece of content that you're trying to gate. This is a great way. Let's just say you want to test a piece of content first. Try it out with the LinkedIn lead gen form. You can just download those leads after and follow up manually. I think it's a great way to just kind of play around and test.
And there you go, you have it from a demand gen marketer herself. And so this slide, the main message is know that like lead gen forms is not the magic fix to all of your problems, right? So if you're looking to improve conversion rate, yes, lead gen forms might actually be the right thing for you, right? Because maybe that the conversion rate's dropping off when people are going to desktop, and that's why the conversion rate's so slow, right? There's some drop off when they're going to your site. That's what I meant to say. So that might help a good bit. If the barrier for someone moving to an MQL or a sales qualified lead is for them to download like a piece of content or for them to provide their information to get something in return, that's when lead gen forms absolutely can help, right? Because it's allowing people to fill out the form a lot easier. However, if you're like, oh, I don't have a ton of opportunities, that might just be based simply on your targeting, right? So lead gen forms, again, it's not the magic fix for everything. So really kind of understand those different stages and what you're trying to improve. I will say, though, lead gen forms can get you up to 3 times better conversion rates. So this is from our own data. We have been seeing that conversion rates are 3 times better than regular sponsored content when leveraging lead gen forms, which is amazing. And if you don't trust just our own LinkedIn data, we have some customers who speak for it themselves. So Binder leveraged lead gen forms, and they had a 500% increase in the amount of leads generated. And TIAS had they cut their cost per lead in half by using lead gen forms. So again, some really tangible results. And you guys will have these slides later, so you can definitely click through the case studies to learn a little bit more about each of these. So I want to talk a little bit about what you need to create the lead gen form. So as Renee mentioned, it's a lot lighter of a lift, but you still do need some additional copy than what you would have for like regular sponsored content. So you obviously will pick an ad format. Again, that can be sponsored content, message ads, dynamic ads, except for text ads. It's the only thing that lead gen forms is not working with, right? And then you would create your offer headline and offer detail, as well as a privacy policy. For some reason, you get a lot of questions on the privacy policy. Every company has one, and it's actually usually really easy to just find it by Googling. And then also, I mentioned that thank you page. So here's an example of what that thank you page looks like. So you want to make sure you have a small customizable message, or be allowed to be customizable, but a small message about what the audience is getting once they fill out your form. I think that's really big on the thank you page. And so you really want to know how members can fill out the form. All of the members on the left-hand side are editable fields. Now, I'll remind you, the form is pre-populated, except if there's like a field that they haven't filled out on their profile. So if they never gave us their phone number, we can't pre-populate that phone number field, right? But know that a member cannot submit an empty form. So even if a field is blank and they're clicking submit, it won't go through. So they are required to fill out all those fields. And automatically, the first 3 fields that will be selected once you start working with lead gen forms are first name, last name, as well as email. We recommend about 3 to 4 fields, by the way. Keep it easy. Don't overwhelm your audience, especially if it's like quick, they're on their phone. Like think about how quickly they want to get through that form to get the content, to get the goodness. So one best practice is leveraging custom questions. So when I was a client solutions manager, I had a ton of education clients, and so they would want to understand like what's the field of study, things like that, right? So custom questions are a really great solution for getting some more information that might be a little bit more specific to your service or your offer. As well as business email. So a lot of people ask us, they're like, wait, on LinkedIn, a lot of people have their personal email. Yes, this is true. We're honest about it. But the good thing is we provide you with a great workaround. So you can leverage custom questions and say something like business email or work email. And again, if it's just that one field that's blank, it's not a huge barrier to entry. So that's a good workaround if you find yourself, we automatically have work email and business email as a selection, but if you find yourself still getting a ton of personal emails, that's a great workaround to include work email as that custom question. So some more best practices. I already mentioned the first one. Don't ask for too much information. 3 to 4 fields is really the sweet spot. Beyond that, it gets a lot harder for people to fill out the form, right? So think about what are the key pieces of information that I need. One thing, apologies, you cannot edit the form. We're working on this, but you cannot edit the form right now after you create it. So one good thing to do is just make sure that right before you save, everything is correct. And the workaround there is what you can do. Let's say you mess up and you're like, I don't want to go through all of this again and rewriting all of this copy. You can duplicate the form and make changes in that duplication and just name the old form like do not use or something like that. And then lastly, obviously try not to include too many fields with manual input. So 1 is not a huge barrier to entry. When you go above like 2, that's when it can be a little difficult. You know, what's the point of a pre-populated lead form if you're making them fill out all of these fields, right? So just keep that in mind.
I think Afia sees me smiling in the background. Greg asked a really good question or had an example. So he's running LinkedIn lead gen forms, and he got 1 lead the first day when he was asking for first name, last name, phone number, email, state, LinkedIn profile. Tried the same form, but just removed phone number, and it was still 1 lead. And his big question is, what's better and what's going to do better? My recommendation is to actually, Greg, evaluate all the form fields that you're already asking for. Like, do you really need first name, last name, phone, email, state, LinkedIn profile to qualify this member? If so, it makes sense to keep it there. But if not, think about the bare minimum that you need for your sales team to qualify. Maybe it's just first name, last name, and email.
Yeah.
Like, most people don't need their phone number anymore to call them. Most of us email a lot of our clients. So.
And you can find out things like state and demographics in your campaign demographics and looking at your lead demographics as well. So absolutely great recommendation.
I love that.
Cool. Any other questions?
I'll let you keep going.
Alrighty. So a few other best practices for lead gen forms, like definitely make sure you're being direct, especially when you have an offer that might be like hefty. So on that phone number, if you know you're going to call them after they provide their phone number, be direct in the copy. After you fill out your information, we will call you, especially in that thank you message, right? Make sure the member is really clear on what they are receiving once they fill out this form. And then lastly, just because it's a lead gen form doesn't mean you shouldn't test and optimize and learn, right? So test a few different variations of the form like Greg did. And then there is still the opportunity to rotate a few different ads evenly with lead gen forms. So kind of see, test like 2-3 variations of lead gen forms and kind of see which one is performing best, and then you can turn off those other variations. So reporting, you do need lead manager access on the company page. So definitely make sure for agencies out there, if you have to download the lead information, you do need a different level of access for to get leads and to be able to download those leads. But you can download them directly from our LinkedIn Campaign Manager tool and see all those metrics in real time. Reporting, actually leads are also available in the reporting chart. So you will be able to see, even though leads are not available in line with campaign demographics and website demographics like conversions are, they will still be available in that kind of reporting chart in Campaign Manager. So it is one of those drop downs so you can see kind of like over time, how's my lead flow doing. And so just wanted to call this out because this is big. If you're running both conversion tracking and lead gen forms, make sure you are definitely separating the campaigns that you're running them in. It can be also really confusing, so make sure you know, what you're looking at. So make sure if you are running lead gen forms, you're not looking at that cost per conversion because it might not make sense and it might not be an accurate read of actually what you're looking at. So if you're using lead gen forms, make sure you are looking at the leads tab. Conversion tracking alternatively will be that conversions tab. So just make sure you got the lingo right here at LinkedIn. And as mentioned, you can download those leads directly from Campaign Manager, or you can actually pass them to your CRM system. So we have a number of partners, and we work with a number of CRM systems, all of them on this slide. And if it's not on this slide, things like Zapier and DriftRock, you can actually use those at a low cost to connect your leads to your system. So Zapier has been really popular, and a lot of people leverage it at a low cost. They can connect to Bob's CRM system, whatever CRM system you're using, right? And that is it, guys. We finally made it to the end.
Awesome. So before we cut into final Q&A, I have one big favor for you. On this slide here, you'll see a lot of our other labs curriculums. Just so you know, this class isn't standalone. We have fundamentals, content marketing, which I love. An upcoming virtual one is going to be on using LinkedIn for lead generation. Got a lot of questions about that today, so that's fun. And then one big favor to ask of all of you, I'm going to set the survey live right now. If you can fill out the survey for us, this feedback is really, really valuable to help make sure that I know how effective this program is. We also had a lot of feedback in the comments today about like product features that you would love to see. Add that in the survey because I will bubble this up to our product team. We'll kind of start to filter a lot of big requests that we see and make sure some of these things get integrated. And then I want to do a big shout out today. We had our media productions team come in, even though most of our office was empty. Huge, huge thank you to you. Thank you, Afia.
Of course.
Thank you, Afia, for flying from New York. Amanda from joining over VC. And then I will cut into some Q&A with the last 6 minutes of today's class.
Cool.
That air horn terrified me a little bit.
Media team's having a little fun today.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. And thank you all of you for joining us, too. So Anonymous is asking, what are our recommendations for small budgets and introducing LinkedIn ads for really small clients?
Amanda, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. I would say if your budgets are limited, my main recommendation would just be to make sure you're not spreading them too thin amongst like a whole lot of campaigns. So if you have like a small budget, I would say you want to split it up to where your daily budget can be our recommendation for like an ideal daily budget to get enough data to tell a good story is from anywhere between like at least $60 to $100 a day. So that's just what you want to make sure is you don't want to spread it too thin to where you're looking at like $10 a day daily budgets, because that's just not going to get you the efficient results that you'll need to see if it's really working. And then I would say if you want to target like smaller companies, I think, did I get that right, Renee? The last part of the question?
I think they are representing smaller clients, so small businesses.
Oh yeah,
Okay, got it.
totally. There's room for everyone on LinkedIn in terms of your company size. So I wouldn't say that there's any concern in terms of the size of the client. It would be, I would say, in addition to making sure that you don't stretch your daily budgets or stretch your budget too thin amongst too many campaigns, you really want to be intentional with your targeting as well. Yeah. So if it is a small business that are targeting other small businesses, you actually can target like using something like company size, for example, to make sure not only that they're reaching the right people, but making sure that the budget you do have is being spent on the right people and not casting the net too wide, and then end up spending your budget on people that are less likely to convert.
Great answer.
Thanks,
so,
Amanda.
I think Anonymous is also asking about how our recommended bids in the forecasting tool are calculated. Do you guys know or have visibility into that?
Based on your audience. So when you're selecting an audience, depending on how niche that audience is, depending on how sought after that audience is, that will determine that bid, and also dependent on how popular that audience is, right? So if other advertisers are really trying to get after that audience, ITDMs, sometimes it might be really hard, or it might be a higher bid. So keep that in mind. And then also remember that advice I gave earlier. It may be that you have to bid high at the start of your campaign. After a week, 2 weeks, maybe even less time than that, take a look at your campaign results. Look to see if you have a healthy click-through rate. Again, that's around like 0.40 here at LinkedIn. And then you can then lower that bid to something that you're more comfortable with in terms of your CPC.
That's awesome. There's another Anonymous, maybe the same one, maybe a different one. Will the relevancy score be impacted if I change my daily spend from $200 down to $25? So it'll still run.
As Amanda mentioned, we definitely wouldn't recommend having like a daily spend of about $25. Like think about your CPC on LinkedIn. If you have like a $5 CPC, that's like getting 5 clicks per day. So in terms of efficiency, it might make sense to just run a shorter timeline with a higher daily budget. Can you repeat the question again? I feel like I forgot the first part.
I may have marked it as
No worries. Yes, so I think it was about like daily, will my relevancy score change? So your relevancy score, you can actually see it if you export your campaign demographics, I believe, or your campaign performance chart. One of those has the relevancy score available. And so you can see changes in your relevancy score by downloading the downloadable reports available in Campaign Manager. If you change daily spend drastically, it'll depend on your click-through rate. So if your click-through rate, if there's a huge impact on your click-through rate, that will bring down your relevancy score. So I would definitely tread lightly and just be really on it in terms of monitoring your campaign to see if you do have a dip in performance by having a dip in budget.
Cool. This is a fun one from Elizabeth. Is there an option to have agency access ad accounts in a new portal versus running them from a personal profile attached to a business page?
Elizabeth, your question is so common. So I present to a lot of agencies and I get this question all the time. We are working on a business manager level for LinkedIn. I do not have a timeline on that, unfortunately. Know that Amanda, me, other client solutions managers, we are often like, product, when is this happening? But as you guys know, these things take time. So stay tuned. There will be a business manager instance of Campaign Manager coming out. And I don't want to say, I don't want to put a timeline on it before I get in trouble with product. But definitely know that they are thinking about it and they are working on it.
Yeah, this just reaffirms, like, if you have product feedback added to the survey. The more we see it, the more we can put pressure and say like, hey, a lot of people are looking for this, so fill out that survey and maybe give us a good score.
Help us help you.
Yes, 100%. Cool. I think that's all the time we have for Q&A today. Just as a final reminder, today's session, the deck, the recording will all be sent out to you over email. So if you loved any portion of it, I know we ran through the additional features a little bit quickly. There are a lot of great slides and stats that you should definitely take a look at. One last call out is that Afia is part of our B2B Institute team, our think tank at LinkedIn with a lot of great ideas. So if you love the trends from today, please check out their microsite. We'll have it linked in the follow-up emails as well. With that, I think we are going to end today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.